What's up, you beautiful people? Welcome to another video. Today, I want to talk you off the ledge. I want to talk you out of doing something incredibly stupid with your money, something that I have seen countless entrepreneurs fall into the trap of, which is you start making your first little bit of money and you go off the freaking rails. You start spending money on all sorts of stupid shit. I'm not going to talk you out of spending your money on stupid shit. I'm going to instead give you an alternative way of thinking about the money that you're making right now and what you should be doing with it if you want to maximize its long-term utility and create this magical thing that everybody seems to want in life, which is financial freedom. So the reason this is top of mind, first of all, is I shared a story, I think last month on one of these videos, is that one of my students, he had a really successful run last year. He made a lot of money, and then he immediately went out and bought a really stupid expensive car. And this is really funny, actually, because I had another student actually this week, come to think of it, he just bought his dream car too. However, he bought his dream car from a very different financial position than the first guy did. See, the first guy, he went out there and in like the first $250,000 of revenue that he made, he went and spent it all on a Lamborghini Urus. And I was like, dude, that's what are you doing? You spent all of the money that you made. And like, there's a difference between revenue and profit, which he did not, I guess, understand. And then there's taxes, and he did not understand that either. So he had a really dope car and no money. So that's one thing. But then my other student, he bought his dream car in a very different financial circumstance. He had reserves, he had money, he had things set aside already so that he could buy that and afford that. And so as you make your first bit, if that's $10,000, $100,000, $1 million, it doesn't matter. The game plan should be the same until you get to a particular point. So let me run you through the playbook if you want to speed run your way to financial freedom as quickly as possible. Number one is you got to keep your costs of living low, like stupid low. Do not go out there and buy an expensive car the first moment that you have some money coming in. Do not upgrade your living circumstances and getting a really nice condo, a really nice house, right? Don't do those things with the first bit of money that you have coming in. Because in the beginning, like the best investment that you can make is putting the money back into the business itself. And your goal should be to take the money, put it back into the business so that you can increase the earning velocity of your money. You can't get the same return on investment from your money in the stock market as you could just putting it back into your business, whether that's putting it back into hiring, back into infrastructure, back into marketing costs, right? Grow that business from doing $100K per month to $1 million per month. That's a much bigger ROI than you could ever get from that 100,000 just putting it away into the stock market, or if you're spending it on a liability, which is a really big important idea too, which is that you need to fundamentally understand the difference between an asset and a liability. This is something that Robert Kiyosaki talks about in his very famous book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I'd be surprised if you have not heard of that book, but in a nutshell, an asset is something that puts money back into your pocket. So owning a piece of a business, owning some equipment that you can then use to make you more money, that's an asset. All right. A liability, however, is something that takes money out of your pocket. So when you go buy a Gucci purse, that's just taking money out of your pocket. That's a liability. You can't do anything with that purse. However, if you were to spend that money on an iPhone, well, if you use that iPhone to shoot content, to run your business, then that can be an asset because you're using that as a tool to put money back into your pocket. So you fundamentally want to understand the difference between assets and liabilities. And as you're making your first bit of money, you need to resist the urge of buying liabilities because they just stack up and the things that you own end up owning you. I'll tell you what, that kid who bought that Lamborghini Urus, I think he's feeling more owned by it than he owns it. Because when it breaks and it has to go to the shop for a couple of months and it runs up a massive bill, like suddenly he's like, what the fuck am I doing here? Right? Like it sucks. And you want to be able to afford those bills without batting an eye at it. And I'm telling you, if you used all the money in your bank to buy it, then you're going to be batting some eyes. So here's how I would approach the act of paying yourself. Every entrepreneur, you either fall into one of two camps. Either you wait to take money out of your business and you're just pouring absolutely everything back in. You're living dirt cheap and you're making no money from the business. A bunch of entrepreneurs do this because the business can't yet justify paying them salary. So they're effectively like a free employee. This is not good. This is not long-term sustainable. You need to get out of this mode as quickly as possible. Get to the point where you're paying yourself a reasonable market rate salary. commensurate to the work that you're doing within the business. And the reason for this is because if you're not paying yourself a salary, first of all, you can't pay your living expenses. You're stressed out. You make really bad decisions inside the business. So you got to take some chips off the table and pay yourself. And you pay yourself a market rate salary because that's effectively what it would cost to replace yourself. And someday you're going to want to replace yourself in the business. And if you don't have that money earmarked and put aside, then where are you going to generate? Where are you going to find that when you decide I want to go bring in a CEO to take over my position? But if you've been paying yourself that market rate salary from the beginning, then it's very easy to be like, I'm going to bring the CEO and this salary is going to go over to them. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. So pay yourself a market rate salary. That can be whatever, but like be reasonable. If your business is doing $100,000 a month, that's about $1 million a year. Probably average there is maybe an $80,000 to $100,000 salary for the average founder CEO at that level, I would say. For the rest, if you're running a high profit margin business and you want to take more money out of the business, then you do that in the form of owner's draws, because any money that you leave in the business has a way of getting spent. It's like Parkinson's law, right? The amount of work will expand to fill the amount of time allotted to it. So if you give yourself 2 weeks to complete a task, it will take 2 weeks to complete that task. Same with budgets, same with money in the bank. When your team looks and they see an X number amount of money in the bank, they think, oh, we have X amount of money to spend on ads, on this machine, on this thing. Money in the bank just sitting there has a way of getting spent. So you want to take that out of the business, put it into your own control. So you want to take those chips off the table. But the key is that you don't spend those chips. You don't just take the chips and then be like, I'm going to go buy that Lamborghini now. No, what you do with the chips is that you reinvest those chips. You take some of those chips, you reinvest them back in the business. The profits that I'm talking about taking out are net of that. So whatever is above and beyond what you're currently reinvesting back into the business, you take out and then you put into stocks, you put them into index funds, you put them into bonds, you put them into high yield savings accounts. You put them somewhere where they're earning for you. And the important thing here is that you want to get to the magical number of $5 million. $5 million worth of chips that you've taken off of the table and that you've invested into an index fund or into bonds. The reason for that is if your business could get to the level of doing, say, about $5 million a year, your income as the CEO founder is probably at least $250,000 at that moment. So that's a pretty good income, right? Now, the magical thing that occurs at $5 million of invested capital, say in an index fund that's earning, let's say really conservatively on average, a 5% return. Well, every year that $5 million is generating $250,000 of cash flow. This is what most people think of when they think of passive income, right? That $250,000 is now about equal to your salary. And something really cool happens when you're no longer reliant on that $250,000 of salary to sustain your lifestyle. Now, you could leave the company. Now you could hire somebody. You could bring somebody in, pay them the $250 to run the company. You still have your $250 that you're making every year from your $5 million nest egg over here, and you're still getting the proceeds and the cash flow distributions on top of that from the business. It's even if you don't want to do that. Now you stay in the job, you're getting $250, you're getting the cash flow. Now you're up to $500,000, right? So like that's pretty good. All told, when you get to $5 million of chips pulled off the table and reinvested so that it's earning for you, it allows you to play the game very differently. You're no longer playing defense. You're officially financially free because you're no longer dependent on your income within the business. You know, if the business goes under tomorrow, you still have your nest egg over here earning the cash flow for you. And that's where you want to get to. I would really encourage you, do not go spending money on stupid shit until you hit that $5 million. You should speed run to that number like your life depends on it, because everything, I'm telling you, the doors unlock to the halls of nirvana the moment you hit that number, because now you can play the game of business because you want to, not because you have to. Anything bad that happens inside the business, any fires that occur, you're like, meh, at the end of the day, I'm okay. Right? Money doesn't solve all your problems, but it solves all your money problems. And so the very first thing that we want to do is solve that money problem. And I'm telling you, putting it aside until you hit that 5 million number is the best use of that money that you can possibly have. So resist the urge to buy the Lamborghini, resist the urge to buy the nice house, wait until you get that 5 million. And then if you want to buy those things, buy them from the cash flow from the asset. So you buy assets and then you let the assets buy you the toys. That's the game plan. Do that and you won't get burned. That's all I got. See you guys in the next video.